So I think we can go ahead and get started. Just quickly on behalf of the center, I just want to welcome Eddie Peet to our center virtually. We're really grateful that he was able to accept our invitation to teach. He's been a teacher for many years. He's at Langri Tangpa Center in Australia, and now this is teaching for the first time for us today. And so, as Mary said, this particular class is a 4-week class. Eddie will also be returning in February for another 4-week class on a different topic. And then, of course, we hope that we can convince Eddie to come back even more than that throughout the year and next year. And just like Miffy, also Miffy's here, so I will also extend invitations to Miffy to return as well. So we're very happy that Eddie is here. So thank you so much for teaching, and over to you.
Oh, you've got to unmute, Eddie.
Yep, so thank you, Venerable Dondru. Well, hi everybody, and welcome along to this class. So I think we should begin, as we normally do, by doing a short breathing meditation, and we'll just settle the mind down, and then we'll get into the class. So please make yourselves comfortable in your seat. Basically, I think this means you should have your back straight and your shoulders relaxed. Then when you are comfortable in your seat, continue to breathe normally and naturally. And while you are breathing normally and naturally, become aware of any movement that takes place in the body. Along with the movement will be associated feelings, and again, just become aware of them, just notice them. And allow everything to settle down. Allow the mind and the body to experience the feeling of ease and rest. If you find yourself thinking about something else, just try and relax a little more and bring the mind back to the body. And notice any movements that take place when you inhale or exhale. And we're just allowing the body to feel at ease, and we're bringing the mind home. now with the body relaxed and the mind at ease and aware, imagine that you're surrounded by a vast crowd of human beings. So as far as the eye can see, you are surrounded by people. And what they have in common with you is a wish to be happy and a wish to be free from suffering. And unfortunately, neither of these wishes have come to fruition. So, although we all wish to be happy, our happiness is not consistent. Although we wish to be free from suffering, suffering often appears. And this is what we have in common with one another. Now, although this is the case for us, there have been others who have put an end to suffering and have accomplished a sort of perfect type of happiness, stable happiness. So I want you to imagine these folks above you in space, and these people are called the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas, the enlightened beings. So think that they're above you, and all sentient beings, all people, in this case, are surrounding you. And think that by being a human being, you have this opportunity to put an end to your suffering, develop all your good qualities, and become an enlightened being. And this is dependent upon you meeting a valid and authentic teacher who will introduce you to the methods to bring about your full development. And when you're able to do that, you will have perfect wisdom, perfect compassion, and the perfect ability to help others effortlessly and spontaneously. And the best thing you can do for others is to help them put an end to their suffering, help them develop all of their good qualities, and bring them to a state of full enlightenment. I think that by attending this class, listening to these teachings, in the long term, this is what your aspiration is, to awaken your potential fully and help others do the same. And to do that, we can take refuge in the Buddhas and the Bodhisattvas who are above us, and articulate the wish to become fully awakened to help others. So let's do that now. We can take refuge together and generate bodhicitta, and we'll say it 3 times together in English. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. I go for refuge until I am enlightened to the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my practice of giving and other perfections, may I become a Buddha to benefit all sentient beings. And now to stabilize this wish to bring about your own enlightenment, we can recite the 4 immeasurable thoughts together. May all sentient beings have happiness and the causes of happiness. May all sentient beings be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May all sentient beings be inseparable from the happiness that is free from suffering. May all sentient beings abide in equanimity, free from attachment for friends and hatred for enemies. Now, as well as meeting an authentic teacher and following the instructions, we do that to accumulate the necessary merit to become fully awakened and to purify the mind. And so these two types of behaviors are all summed up in a practice called the 7 limbs. So we can recite that prayer now. Reverently I prostrate with my body, speech and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, actual and imagined. I declare all my negative actions accumulated since beginning this time and rejoice in the merit of all holy and ordinary beings. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for living beings. I dedicate my own merits, those of all others, to the great enlightenment. And now we're going to make an offering to the merit field of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who are in front of us and above us. And this is called a mandala. And the essence of this is just to let go of any form of clinging that you have to your body, to your sense of self, to your merit, to anything. I think that in the absence of the clinging, a wonderful pure land appears, and this is what you're offering to the field of enlightened beings. So this ground, anointed with perfume and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, 4 continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this as a Buddha field and offer it, and may all living beings enjoy this pure land. Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamnayatayami. So we've released the offering, and we see it's being accepted by the Buddha, and he smiles at us with delight. So as he's smiling, try and see as clearly as you can his eyes looking at you. So the gaze is one of kindness and acceptance. Then you notice that all the beings around the Buddha have begun to dissolve into light and melt into him. An emanation leaves his heart and moves through space and comes to abide above the crown of your head. It descends through space, entering the head, coming down to the rest at the level of the heart. The light begins to expand, filling your body, filling your mind. Body and mind are now light. The light goes out through the pores of your skin and fills all of space. Wherever there are beings within space, they're touched by that light, transformed into fully awakened beings. No difference between yourself, no inner, no outer, no sense of reified self and other. All of this, all conceptions vanished. So resting in the natural state of the mind, it feels peaceful, it feels wonderful. But then there's this idea of, this is just for my welfare alone. I've sworn to help others. So with that in mind, the light all begins to withdraw now from the edges of space and retreat back into your heart. You feel yourself embodied, sitting in the chair, breathing normally and naturally. And you think that this visualization practice I did was just on the level of imagination. I've got to actually wake myself up and help others do the same. And it's for that reason I'm engaged in this class on the nature of the mind. And then breathing in deeply through your nostrils. Exhale through your mouth. Allow your eyes to flutter open. And move your body in whatever way you desire. Make yourself feel comfortable once again in the chair. And we'll begin the class very shortly. Okay. Hello, something's not right. There we go. This is our class, right? Mind is a creative experience, and this is the first class. And as you can see, it's a 4-week class. So the takeaway, we're going to do this for 4 weeks. What I hope you'll come away from with this course is that you understand that the mind is the creator of all of your experiences. That it's also the creator of your happiness. And here I'd like to add something more to this, which is that the mind that is the creator of happiness is a particular type of mind. It can be either perceptual or conceptual, but it must be disciplined. So it's the disciplined mind that is the creator of happiness. And finally, that you understand at the end of this course that mind is the creator of all of your discontent too. And once again, it's a particular type of mind. It's an undisciplined mind. So at the end of the course, I hope you'll accept this idea that the mind is the creator of every experience of happiness and discontent, and that you'll have some techniques to use to create more happiness for yourselves and decrease states of discontent. Now, this course is, like I said, about the mind. And as Buddhists, it's our sort of job to investigate the nature, function, and effects of different thoughts and emotions that occur within us. And we're doing this so that we can realistically act upon what we discover, so that we can actually create more happiness for ourselves and decrease our states of discontent. So, Geshe Rabden, I've taken this quote from his book, The Mind and Its Functions. As you can see, the quote says this: so to investigate the natures, the functions, and the effects of the various thoughts and emotions that occur within us, and to act realistically upon our findings, is the very essence of the study and practice of Dharma. Now, psychology is concerned with how the external environment is interpreted by the mind. So as such, it's an analysis of the inner world of our experience. And without understanding our experience of the world in which we act and communicate, there's no way for us to actually understand, for example, the First Noble Truth, the truth of suffering, which is the starting point of our spiritual journey. Now, Buddhist epistemology, in turn, is the study of knowledge. So how we know what we know, and how we can test its validity and refine our knowledge. Now, the Buddhist explanations of epistemology are not just empirical data, such as you normally find in science. although of course many of the discoveries or explanations concur with Western science. The difference between them is the motivation. So the motivation from a Buddhist point of view is to bring about liberation for ourselves, free ourselves from suffering and its causes. From the point of view of Western science, it's primarily about survival, just to survive. Now in Buddhism, according to them, the epistemology and psychology go hand in hand. When the study of psychology is undertaken without a basis of epistemology and the methods of practice it suggests, there is the risk that it can remain just a mere intellectual exercise and not bring real benefit. So we need to, what we're going to try and do is integrate the psychology and the epistemology. And today, in terms of this, of our topic being like mind being the creator of all of our happy states and our discontent, we're going to look at perception. So Buddhist thought recognizes basically two kinds of mental experience. An experience in which the mind accesses its object directly, and the experience in which the mind relies on another mind to access its object. And these two states roughly correspond to perception and conception. So I think perception and conception are terms we both generally understand. Now, an example of perception for something is, as the picture here, your eye sees something, your tongue tastes something, your hand touches something, you perceive something. And the conception, of course, is mainly around the thinking aspect of mind. So the class today is really around the role of the senses and how perception is the creator of our experience. And this has been given to flesh out some of the major elements presented in the mind and its potential module, which has also been given at the center, right, by a different teacher. So the material I've relied upon to present this course is a number of different books which I'll show you shortly, and a very short film lasting 5 minutes, which I'll show you. And I'm going to present this from both perspectives, the Western perspective and the Buddhist perspective, and show you how there are differences in them, but there are also similarities. And they both point to the same end, which I find really interesting, and I hope you will too. So by the end of this course, I hope you understand how the process of vision in particular, how we perceive things with the eye, colours, shape, movement and so forth, from both the Western perspective and the Buddhist perspective. And these are the primary books that I've relied upon. So the Foundation of Buddhist Practice by His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Venerable Thupten Chodron, it's a series, there's about 5 of them. They are terrific, fantastic books. And I would suggest anybody who's serious about the study of Buddhism, get that series. And it's written particularly for Western students who are interested in Lam Rim study, meaning the graduated stages of a path to enlightenment. These other 3 books in particular, not so easy to read, not easy to read. The easiest would be probably the middle one, Buddhist Psychology by Geshe Tashi Tsering. And finally, this is another new series about Science and Philosophy in Indian Buddhist Classics. Tremendous. So here we've got, this one here is Volume 2, The Mind. The one before that was on the World. And you get a very in-depth presentation of the Buddha Dharma, how it looks at the external phenomena and the internal phenomena called the mind. Although Science and Philosophy in the Buddhist Classics, Volume 2, it's very deep and wide, but readable. But I think you need to sort of go slowly with it. And probably the best book here, especially as for a beginner, would be The Foundation of Buddhist Practice. So I'm going to bring on this little film right now. It only lasts for 5 minutes, and then we'll look at a couple of slides and have a little pause and see if you have anything you'd like to mention or talk about, anything you'd like to discuss. So let's have a look.
Hi, my name is Mark and I'm a physicist. Like all physicists, my goal is to understand things at the most basic level possible. Today, I want to talk to you about color. But first, I'll have to tell you about light, because color is something you see, and you don't see anything when there's no light. Light is created by light sources, like the sun or light bulbs. It is made of tiny packets of energy called photons. Photons travel very fast, at the speed of light. But they also sort of vibrate as they move, or if you prefer, they oscillate. The number of oscillations that a photon completes every second is called its frequency. Photons oscillate at different frequencies. For instance, most photons emitted by the sun or light bulbs have frequencies in the range between 450 and 750 trillion oscillations per second. 1 trillion is 1 million million, so photons can vibrate really, really fast. In your retinas, the screen at the back of each of your eyeballs, you have millions of tiny photon detectors called cones. When they detect photons, they react by producing signals that are pre-processed in the retina itself, then sent to the brain for further processing. There are 3 teams of cones. Let's call them teams A, B, and C. Because they have different chemical compositions, they react differently to photons of different frequencies. Cones in team A react the most to photons that oscillate 500 trillion times per second. If the frequency is a little bit above or below this value, they still react, but less. And if the frequency is much larger or much smaller, they don't react at all. Cones in team B react the most to photons that oscillate 550 trillion times per second. And cones in team C prefer photons that oscillate 650 trillion times per second. We are now ready to understand why a particular object has a particular color. Let's start with a strawberry. It is made of chemical compounds that absorb photons of most frequencies, but it contains no compounds that absorb photons that oscillate about 500 trillion times per second. So these photons are reflected, enter your eyes, and react strongly with the cones in team A. When this happens, the signal that is sent to your brain results in you seeing red, by a complicated process that is not yet fully understood. A lime contains different chemical compounds than a strawberry. It absorbs photons that have frequencies below 500 and above 600 trillion oscillations per second, and reflects photons that oscillate around 550 trillion times per second, exactly what's needed to excite the cones in team B. So they react strongly, and the signal that is sent to the brain results in you seeing green. A blueberry absorbs most photons, but reflects those that oscillate about 650 trillion times per second. So this time it's team C that reacts strongly, and the result is that you see blue. There are objects like sugar cubes that reflect most photons at all frequencies. When these photons enter your eyes, the cones of all 3 teams react strongly and produce signals. When this happens, the result is that you see white. So even though we have only 3 teams of cones, we can see more colors than just red, green, and blue. For instance, the peel of a banana absorbs most photons that oscillate more than 600 trillion times per second and reflects most photons in the range 500 to 550 trillion oscillations per second. So both teams A and B react strongly. This combined signal does not result in you seeing red and green at the same time, but in a new perception, yellow. When both teams A and B react, but A reacts slightly more than B, you see orange. If only teams A and C react, you see purple, and so on. Different objects reflect different combinations of frequencies, and this results in all of the wonderful colors we see in the world. By some estimates, human beings can distinguish between several million colors. But it is important to keep in mind that objects and light itself are not by themselves colored. Color is a mental perception. You see color because of the way your eyes and brain are constructed. Some animals have a much simpler retina with only one team of detectors. They can distinguish between light and dark, but see no color. They see the world in black and white. So, color is a special effect added on what you see by your brain with the help of 3 teams of special detectors in your eyes. And what a beautiful special effect it is. It's also useful in our modern world and also in nature. For instance, color vision allows us to easily recognize ripe fruit among the leaves of a tree. I will leave you with one interesting observation that you can make. If you photograph the screen of a color TV through a magnifying glass, you will see that it consists only of red, green, and blue light-emitting regions. Yet the screen can reproduce any color visible to the human eye because it's made especially for human beings with the 3 colors of its light-emitting regions corresponding to the 3 teams of cones in human eyes. Aren't science and technology wonderful?
Okay. So, I hope you found
Eddie,
it fascinating.
Eddie,
Yeah.
just before you go on, can you then up on the top where it says original sound, just turn it off and we'll be able to hear you better.
Ah, okay.
Yeah.
Turn it off. It's on at the moment.
Yeah.
So turn it off.
Yeah.
Okay. Is that it? Okay.
Yeah, that's good.
Thank you, Miffy. So, this film was made in 2014, and it was in response to a challenge which asked, "What is color?" And it was made for, it was made in such a way that an 11-year-old could understand what color was. Now, they didn't. So this film did not win the award. And what made it very difficult for these 11-year-old people to get their heads around was that the idea that light itself is not colored, and that color only exists in our brains. It is the mind brain that produces color. So this was sort of like too much for the youngsters. And so, of course, it didn't win, and something else did. And I had a look at the other one, but I thought this one is much more appropriate for us. I think we can at least get our heads around it. We might not remember much of the physics and the rest of it. But what I want to get across to you was that the color is not out there external to us. So I find this fascinating because like I'm looking at the screen and you are too, and doesn't it look as if the color is over there on the screen? And if you lifted your eyes up a bit, looked around, the color seems to be like on the walls. So there's something going on here, isn't there? There's some disconnect. In Buddhism, you often hear this phrase, things don't exist in the same as they appear. So it appears the color is out there, like I'm looking at Kathy and Venerable Dundrup, I can see Miffy, and I can see that your skin looks pale, Venerable Dundrup's a bit browner. I don't know how I look, but a little bit pale from the side. It looks like the color is coming from your faces. The color is coming from your robes. And yet it's not. So I just want to let that settle down and then think about like how you respond, how you actually respond to the colorful world. Is there anything anybody would like to say at all?
Eddie, so the Buddhist saying of things don't exist in the way they appear. In the West, we've got seeing is believing.
Well, that's right. So if you believe that the color was actually out there, that people like had black skins or white skins, and then you come up with different ideas about this, these beliefs would be based on a fallacy, on a wrong idea, wouldn't they?
And so then it also, the question comes up, if you're colorblind, then is it that, you know, there's a color out there that you can't see, or is it just, it doesn't actually even exist for you because you don't have the technology to see it?
Mm.
If the color exists in your technology rather than out there.
So when the colors, they do appear to us naturally to be out there, don't they? External to us. It looks like the fruit has the color, the houses, the walls. You and I, we have the color, right? The color exists from our side, from the side of the body, from the side of the body. Like I'm looking at you, I can see you. The color of your skin looks like it's over there, from the side of your body. And my coloring will look the same to you. The term for that is intrinsic existence. The color appears to intrinsically exist because it appears to exist from the side of the basis, meaning the basis for us is from us. The person is the basis, and the color is one of our characteristics.
Eddie, it's Jordan.
Okay, yep.
Just thinking, would you say one way you could put it is we're believing the effect as real?
Yep, that's true. And as long as the effect is that, yeah, the color's over there. That's right. We believe that. It looks like that. We believe it. And we've acted as if it were the case. I'd say that.
So we're missing, the bit we're missing is that there's an effect happening.
Well, I think the part we think the effect is coming from, is being produced from the side of the objects.
Yeah, I don't, when I look around, I don't even see an effect. I just believe that's green. Well, that's pink, you know.
Yeah,
so,
and that's what you'd call the effect.
Yeah. But then coming to realize there is an effect more consciously helps us to understand what's actually happening. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the effect that we're apprehending is the color is coming from the object. But the objects have the color. But the actual, what's actually going on, the effect is being produced from back here, from perception, mind and brain.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so I'm going to drop this now and go back to our slides, unless anybody has anything to ask or. Okay. Screen. Okay. Oops, sorry.
Hi, my name is Mark, and I'm a physicist.
How do I
Just
move this?
go to the next slide, hun. Yep.
Ah, here we go. Great. Thank you. Thanks, director, producer. So now the light, right? So now I just want to just remember, this is also coming from the Western perspective, but it doesn't go against the Buddhist perspective. So what we're seeing depends upon light, that we need light. Without light, you can't see. You can't apprehend anything visually. So what you're seeing then will depend upon the light source. If it's the sun, if it's a light bulb, and then you go, if it's a particular type of light bulb. So you've got natural sources of light and artificial sources of light. Those sources of light, remember the photons go from that source of light, they're going to strike objects, whether the object is directly your eyes or something else. So we can see here that that whatever you're going to see is also going to be dependent upon the light source. Not only that, what else makes it dependent is the time that the light source is manifesting. So you'll see that in the morning when the sunlight comes up, you see things differently than they do at the evening. For instance, there's some flowers that appear incredibly bright in the morning and in the evening. And in the period between that, they seem to lose their color. They're very ordinary. So what's appearing to you can be dependent upon time. Now the color itself, I mean the object that the light's hitting, bouncing off, going into your eyeball, being manufactured by the brain, then coming back out, that color is will be different for other people and change depending upon what's surrounding it. So we have a lot of dependencies here. The color depends upon other things, like I said, the light itself, time, its environment. But the thing I would like you to take away from this little presentation and to understand is that the objects and the light itself are not themselves colored.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
okay, so now we'll come to the Buddhist presentation. And the first thing I want to do is to define what perception is. And so let's have a look at that first. So there are different ways you can define what we call perception, right? So many ways. So sometimes you can define it from the point of view of like how is the mind actually engaging the object? So from that point of view, perception is a cognizer, a knower or an awareness, to which its object appears clearly without being mixed with a generic image. So we just say, like you look at what we call an apple, and just the color and shape appears to the eye. And this term generic image, what can I say about this? This is generic images are mainly formed through conceptions. Like for instance, like you and I, we're looking at one another now, we can see one another, right? So what's appearing to your eyes is the color and shape, and me moving my hands. It's also movement and also some depth. So you got movement, depth, color, shape. This is what's appearing to your eyes, right? And me called Eddie. Now, if you were to turn your head around to the side and not look at me, and then think, what did Eddie, what's he look like? That's called a generic image of Eddie. It's not the actual thing that appears to your eye, it's the idea of Eddie. So this is from the point of view here, how the mind is engaging its object. There's another way you can define perception. And this is from the point of view of it's what they call the uncommon dominant condition. So here, it's an awareness that has developed independence upon its uncommon dominant condition, a sense power possessing form. So anything, now what the heck is that? What does that mean? So what we often think is that it's our eyes that see. So the eye possesses form, is a form object. It's physical. But here they're not talking about that. They're talking about some sort of what they call like a clear type of form. So it's not the eye itself, it's something else more subtle. And we'll come to that in a couple of more slides. So just introducing to you the definitions.
Eddie, can I just jump in here and make a comment about when you were talking about the generic image?
Yeah.
It struck me that, you know, if we haven't seen someone for quite a while, we've got this generic image in our mind of what they look like, and then we see them and it's like they're much older than we thought, and their face is much droopier than we thought, and it's a bit of a shock. So because, you know, the generic image doesn't get updated day by day or year by year. But then I also remember people, you know, really old people saying, who've been married for like 60 years or something, and saying, to me, she still looks 18 or she still looks 20. So what's most dominant in their mind is the generic image and not actually what they're seeing physically.
Yep. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, most of the times that's the case. Yeah. So perception, right? So here really we're talking about, so there are different types of perception. So I put this picture up here so you can see there's a number of young children there and they're all looking at something. And what they're looking at is a movie screen. So they're perceiving with their eyes, vision, movement, color, shape. Right? They also have in their hands here some popcorn. And they can put that popcorn in their mouths and they will perceive the taste of the popcorn. Right? They're also sitting back in chairs. So their body's perception, a physical perception of another form. These are all forms of perception. So we perceive through the five senses: eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body. They're the five physical senses. We also have mental perception, but we're just looking at these five here. So the eye is associated with vision, colors, and so forth. Ears with sounds and so forth. So this is not a difficult thing to understand, is it? We've all got these perceivers: eyes, ears, nose, and so forth. Now, so these five sense awarenesses, which are called the awarenesses of the five doors. And so the doors are the eyes, ears, nose, tongue, and body. So it depends upon those doors. The eye awareness sees visual form, ear awareness hears sounds, and so forth. Now you might ask here, and you could have asked it from before too, and ask yourself, what do we actually see? So from the science point of view, like I said, the seeing's coming from back here, right? From the mind and brain. It's the objects don't actually possess the colors that you're seeing. That's from the scientific point of view. From the Buddhist point of view, there's no agreement whatsoever on what we actually see. So there's a meeting place right there. Right? They agree. So a little bit about this phenomena called the eye awareness, which we're talking about, right? So the eye sense power. So like I said, there are five different types of sense awareness. We talked about how this eye awareness is called this, and awareness is developed in dependence upon its uncommon dominant condition and eye sense power. Now, if you're talking about hearing, for instance, or tasting, you just turn this last little bit around, you know. So it's always the same, an awareness that has developed independence upon its uncommon dominant condition. Here, because it's vision, we're talking about an eye sense power. If it was hearing, it would be an ear sense power. If it was tasting, it would be a tongue sense power. And so remember, it's not the actual tongue itself, the eye, the ear. It's called a subtle type of form. And there are differences of opinion in how that form might exist. So as you know, probably most of you would know, there are different, what they call tenet systems in Buddhism. So the realist schools of the Vaibhashika and Sautrantika, they say it's a real form. The Mahayana schools of the mind only and the middle way go, no, it's not a real form. So here we have, once again, this eye awareness, and I've just put up these, a couple of pictures from Western science, but we're really going to be here talking about it from the Buddhist point of view. So a sense awareness, like an eye awareness, is generated in dependence upon two conditions, the dominant condition and their immediate condition. So the dominant condition of a sense awareness is that which principally assists in the development of that sense awareness. And there are two of them. It's called the common and the uncommon. Now, the common condition for an eye sense awareness is light. That's the common. Without light, you're not going to see anything. This is exactly the same as the scientific presentation. So it's common for any human being, if you wanted to see anything, you need a light source. Otherwise, you're not going to see those things. So that's common to all humans. The uncommon, of course, is this very subtle form. Then it needs another one called the immediate condition. Now, the immediate condition is mental consciousness. So we've got three things there.
So Eddie, can I ask, so when you're talking about the eye awareness, is that, so for instance, a computer could analyze the photons jumping off something and figure out what color it is, but a computer wouldn't have an awareness of the color. Is that what you mean by
that's right.
awareness? Okay.
So awareness is awareness is defined as like clear and knowing.
Knowing, right.
Knowing, right? So remember, so for those of you who would have done the previous class on mind in the DB modules, there would have been a definition given as clear and knowing. So these awareness, that's what they are, minds, clear and knowing. Now, I know this, so one of the great difficulties of when you come along to studying Buddhism, especially, is all the new terms. It's, for me, especially when I first began, it's really difficult. It's like going back to school and learning science, and it's like I wasn't very good at science. So that'll be one thing that you'll need to sort of get your head around. But my next slide, I just sort of tried show you the similarities between the Buddhist presentation and the scientific presentation. So up the top, you can see the Western, down here will be the Buddhist. So the the common condition needed. From the Western point of view, you need to have light. Now I'll put down underneath it compound. So the light has got to strike something, like either it's your eye, which is compounded, or it's some other source, like strawberries or a banana or a wall. It's compounded. It's made up of stuff. So, but without the light, you're not going to be able to generate a visual consciousness, a perception. So we have these two together. Secondly, there's the Western presentation, the biology. So we see light in a particular way depending upon the cones in our eyes. Animals will see light quite differently, depending upon their biology and the different cones. Buddhists present this more from the point of what they call the uncommon eye sense power. So this is, I said, a very subtle form. So you could think of it, just to get your head around it, as not the eyeball, but the nerve, all the stuff that's not apparent to you. And finally, the Western side, so we could say mind, but I didn't put up here was brain, so I should have put up the brain, but I thought that's in the biology. So now this is interesting where they put up psychology, because you can actually see things that are not there and not see things that are there. And from the Buddhist presentation, the immediate condition is what they call mental consciousness itself. So this is where the meeting place, the three conditions needed to perceive anything visual. But like I said, whatever you perceive visually, whether it be the color, the shape, the movement, or the depth, it's being generated from us. It's not out there. It's not out there existing intrinsically on its own in the objects, all that stuff, right? Both sides are saying this, the West and the East. So, asking you, so what's the function of perception? And in particular, like I said, this visual perception that we've been talking about. So basically, it's to collect raw sense data. It's interesting it says to collect it when actually many times we're generating it. And lastly, it's like to say, to gain an unmistaken impression of our external world. Well, they're all mistaken. All perceptions are mistaken. The mistake is that you cling to the appearances of color, shape. You're mistaken. They're not out there. So what can you take away from this? The objects and light itself are not themselves colored. We see color by the way our eyes and brain are constructed, but also consciousness itself, awareness. And color is like a mental perception. Now, what I want you to do in the week before we get our next class is to just keep looking out there around the world with your eyes open and looking at how it all seems to be coming from out there, when in fact it's really being generated from back here, from within your brain and your consciousness. And notice the discrepancy between what you're doing with that information. And that's the end of our course for today. So next week, we're going to come back and look at this and go, okay, this is the case. When I deceive myself thinking that actually the colors and shapes and so forth are all out there, how does that produce suffering? How does it produce a sense of discontent? And what do I do knowing that that's not the case? How can I apply that knowledge so that I'm less distressed, more in harmony with the way things are? So I hope this has been interesting for you. And that
Eddie, you're going to let people ask some questions?
Yeah, that you're interested enough to maybe come back next week. So before I sort of summarize, are there any final questions or anything that anybody would like to volunteer at all?
So just stop the screen share, Eddie, so you can see who's waving at you.
Well, this can be a little difficult. Gallery. Okay, who's going to wave at me? Hello, there's Anne. Yes, she's waving. Anne, you've got your thing. You need to put the microphone on. There you go.
That's it. Yes, Eddie and everyone, it's been interesting talking about vision because as Miffy and Eddie know, I'm losing mine. And I was thinking as you were talking about these objects needing light and these other components, that those objects, say strawberry and apple, they haven't really changed. My vision is changing, so I can miss pieces because my rods and cones aren't working properly. They've got pigment on them, so they're not changing. So if they were real, I was thinking if they were real and definite, as I'm looking at them, you know, I would think, well, they're changing, but they're actually not. So it's just the vision that's changing.
Well,
And
they're changing in a way that's a little bit different, Anne. Of course, they're changing because they're impermanent phenomena.
Yes,
They're not
that's right.
changing in the way that your eyes are perceiving them.
That's right. So in a way, it's been a little bit easier to understand because I'm losing that sense. So things are really empty. I mean, I go out at night, I can't see a thing. So it's just nothing. So yeah, it's there's been really interesting doing this and thinking about how the brain and the eye functions when those sense awarenesses start to go. Yeah. I'm not sure there's a question there. I'm probably still processing it.
Well, I mean, Anne, it's really interesting that you say that because if things really did, if the color, for instance, really was coming from the object, then as your sight fades, then the object should be disappearing. That's the only way that could function. But because the object's still there, but you're perceiving it differently, there's your proof right there that it's your perception.
Yep.
Where all the action happens.
That's right. Yeah. So if you did that to sort of an emotional thing that is triggering you for whatever reason, whether it's happy or sad or whatever, that again is just the perception, you know, so it's sort of coming together for me. I think I'll have more questions than answers at the moment, but you know, it's been really helpful to get this context around it. Thank you.
Okay. So what's even more sort of like freaky and interesting is that this doesn't apply just to vision. It appears to what you hear and what you taste and what you touch, every sense.
I think Mary Camille also had a question.
Okay, I just can't see her waving, but yeah, what's the question?
Oh, I don't think I did. I think Daniel Welsh, did you have a question?
Danny, do you have a question? No? If you do, you've got to turn your microphone on. Okay. Okay, well, we'll bring it down to the thing. Let's go back here. So, yeah, since I've been listening to this and watching it, it amazes me because, like, we watch TV each night, and it really looks like the colours are coming from the TV. Doesn't it? You go outside and look at the skies, like the blue, and I'm seeing the blue.
Well, Eddie, I mean, that's another fantastic thing, that in that just the Western description of how color actually works, that the sky looks blue to us, but actually it's everything except blue.
Right.
It's
That's
all the other, photons are being absorbed, and it's only the ones that, interact
Right.
to make blue that are bounced off, that aren't absorbed. So the sky actually is not blue. It's every color except blue.
That's right. And then we call it blue and so forth. So anyway, I just let this settle and sort of think about it, because this ties in to, as we'll see next week, or whether you create causes for your own suffering, or actually can find ways to diminish it, lessen it. Because as we know, from a Buddhist perspective, all of suffering is basically coming from a wrong view. And this view is called inherently just the grasping at it, the belief that the things are existing in the way they appear to us. So I've just showed you here that anything that has color does not exist in the way it appears to you. It does not have the color you think it does. So today we've looked at perception, like what it is from a number of different points of view, how it actually functions from a Western point of view and a Buddhist point of view, and sort of like understanding how that perception of color exists. It's like it's being generated back here. It's dependent upon external conditions and so forth. And if you'd like to find out about a bit more about color, these two things up here on the Physics and Psychology of Color by Andrew Hansen. This is a man who spent 20 years measuring color, and he's given it up because he's realized that the color depends so much upon the psychology of the person that color itself, it's a losing game. And there's another show of his just called Color, and this is the TEDx Youth presentation. They're not very long, but they just support everything that I've been saying. And so next week, like I said, we'll look at how the perceptions can actually be one of the causes for suffering and discontent, or we could bring our knowledge about perception into the practice of Dharma, make it work for us rather than against us. So I'll just stop here and we'll dedicate what we've learned. So by the merit that you've all created by listening to this presentation and thinking about it, may you, everybody you know, your teachers, in fact, all sentient beings, may this merit create harmony amongst you all and a sense of a personal responsibility towards all those you care about. May you develop all the stages of the path. May you bring about and develop a mind of enlightenment which seeks to bring enlightenment for yourself and others, with the understanding that there isn't anything that exists from its own side. So color does not exist from its own side. The Buddha doesn't, we don't, sentient beings don't. Enlightenment does not exist from its own side. But everything does exist, like dreams and illusions. So therefore, let's make effort in these dreamlike lives we have to bring about the welfare of ourselves and every other living being. And thank you very much. Thank you for being here.